First time being back.
First time back, kind of wild.
I've just been away from content kind of for a really long time. It's been over 2 years at this point, and I really feel like my framework, my understanding, my ideas, not really seeing anybody else having that kind of framework. And I really feel like it's important to sort of I'm just itching to like get these ideas out there again, and feel like this is sort of a perfect kind of transition back into it, as a whole bunch of ideas of like many different things that I want to do. But this just feels right, being here with you in this podcast form, because we have been having like 2-hour podcasts that are just absolutely keynote, just amazing content, and then we just don't record them. So I feel like we have to rectify that.
I agree. I think it's just about time. It's been a long time coming, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Even our first kind of long form discussion that we had, where we're just talking about a singular point, exhausting that point, or moving forward in that linear thought process, I knew pretty much immediately this should be something that should be taken forward in terms of making it public for other people to view. Personally, never talked to someone quite like you. I think a lot of people have that reaction upon like joining the Yasukeh or anything like that, where it's just kind of like, wait, who's this guy?
Mm-hmm.
It's just got these takes that at first maybe seem out there or wild. And then if you're willing to put in the effort to understand and come the distance, it's like, oh, actually, this is just something that's not out there. And that's why it seems wild to me. So it's been really awesome. Great experience for us just talking so often. And this seems like the right next step in terms of just go over these concepts now that they're fully matured. Well, maybe not all of them are fully matured, but enough of them are very, very mature to the point where it would be beneficial for a lot of people to hear this kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And that's always just a really interesting point that we've been generally talking about over the entire summer, is the concept is just like roles and sort of putting people into the categories of high risk, low risk, medium risk. It's been framed before as like, I'm perfectly willing to have an idea that I'm like 17% sure about and then just run with it. And then, exhaust it as if it was true. And then if it's not, just throw it away. But then that kind of coming up with ideas that I will have an idea, and then, 5 years down the line, we'll just hear it everywhere. And then certain ideas are ones that never really kind of get traction, even if they are sort of true. But in that sense, who are you?
I'm so glad you asked, because I love to talk about me. My name's Starman, because we all use internet handles, except for people that break the sphere of the internet. Longtime follower and viewer of Yasukeh. One of my very first continuous kind of hobbies was tuning into the stream. And realistically, the thing that drew me to your stream was not super high level Tryndamere play. It was always the discussion with the stream. And so in that relationship, kind of just going from like viewer, and then later on when you were doing less streaming and then you were doing more streaming, it's kind of back and forth for a bit.
Yeah.
Joining the Yasukeh and interacting there, I was able to gain a wealth of knowledge, different concepts and spheres that I wasn't exposed to previously. And so for me, it's been a journey. You've been described very accurately as a high-risk individual, and I've been described as a medium-risk individual. We'll talk more about what that means later. But realistically, in this particular format, the way in which I go about seeking information is very much in that low-risk sphere of kind of gathering it and testing ideas that maybe I'm a little more than 17% sure on.
Yeah.
So for me, my area of study is, largely in theology or astrology or a variety of these other things. And over the years of knowing you broadened my horizons to a bunch of things. So I think in terms of discussion, there's a lot of interchange between us. And so my background is not so much in the internet sphere. Tried several times, and it's just not for me. So kind of this is new for me in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so going from where we met in League of Legends and coming to now, pretty long journey. Not really sure how to summarize that, because it's been several years.
It's been several different arcs, several
Yes.
different journeys, and they've all been like several episodes for each one to discuss them.
Yeah.
Like full on Dragon Ball Z, for each particular arc. But particularly, it is really just in that idea of, uh, you are not the only person who's just like, oh, I'm not here for the high level mid Trinimir jungle invade gameplay.
Yeah.
And really, I wasn't there for high level mid Trinimir jungle gameplay. It was at a certain point, it was just completely falling out of love with League. And it was really just, League was more of just a pretense to stream. And the streaming was a pretense to essentially just talk about whatever idea was in my head at the time. And that was, more than half the people that followed me weren't there for gameplay whatsoever. There were definitely two different cohorts. And so even though, I have not played a single game of League since August of 2023, over 2 years clean, will never come back. We're really just doing a more advanced version of the other side of Yasukeh that some of you guys may be familiar with.
I kind of remember, just on a note of kind of seeing where you were and where you're going to, I do remember watching the stream and watching a cool play, being like, that was really cool. Hope he finishes that up so he can answer my question in chat. It's not related to League of Legends.
Yeah.
At that time, a lot of that, you had a lot of hype around you about Carnivore. When you were doing Carnivore, it was a very, very new kind of thing. A lot more noise in that space now. But I do remember so many people just kind of being like, wait, what is this thing? And so the chat just filled with like questions about health or diet. And it's like, really cool play, bro. Could you answer my question about protein requirements? And that's really just kind of the tip of the iceberg for your way in which you streamed. Getting League of Legends out of the way, only better. I remember tuning into one or two of your just chatting streams after you quit League. And it was like, wow, this is just better. This is a better format because there's not a distraction of playing a super stressful, high level game. It's not like you're playing, Candy Crush over here.
Yeah.
So in that regard, also just impressive to maintain the high level at 1 and then still being able to interact on a slightly esoteric level in the public eye. And for me, that's been super awesome. And my own studies in that area are kind of parallel in regards to yours. So being able to talk about these types of things and have the turnaround and the bounce back is really, really awesome. Really have loved this summer. And then obviously the summer a couple years ago when you were with us as well. It's just been amazing. So I think that really kind of sums up more or less the history of like what the podcast is. We're calling it, it's called a podcast, right?
Yeah. We'll say podcast.
We'll say podcast.
Okay.
And then kind of like what's in store in terms of where you're going with the whole concept. I know we've talked about diatribes, we've talked about paradigms, we've talked about worldview, and of course, we mentioned earlier the categorizing people into high, medium, and low risk. I know that's been super helpful for a lot of the guys around here who've been asking you advice on where they fit in necessarily in life. Kind of that framework seems to be a really big one for helping young men find out where they should really be and where they should be embracing strength or maybe changing things about themselves to suit their position.
Yeah, and that paradigm in general, which we'll go like way more in depth into at some other point, it's just so much more like actionable. And that's really always a thing of when it comes to anything like health related or fitness related or just any way that I'm trying to get somebody to improve their lives, it's always about what is something that is actually actionable and can actually stick. Because if there's always the ideal that I strive to. Like I always try to be very like autistically perfection in a certain way of if I think that something is bad, then I just don't want to do it whatsoever. Of like I have many reasons why I don't want to curse. And so just being very deliberate and active of just kind of having like absolutely zero tolerance for that. When I was carnivore, it was essentially just like, all right, there's no reason for me to ever have a slice of pizza or like donuts that are coming in. So just don't do that. And in that sense, there's what is acceptable for me. But then I also understand that like most people are not me. Most people are not willing to sort of take that extreme route So it's really just trying to find and understanding ways that give actionable advice that is something that is actually the realistic next step for somebody else to take. Um, in the concept of diet, when I was on like carnivore, it was just like, eat, half a pound of ground beef, eat a steak, and then just do that. Just up your red meat intake, even if you're not changing anything else about your life, and you will receive benefits from that. And it's not, even if it might be more ideal for you to do something else, that is not going to be what is the best piece of advice for you, because you're never going to do that. So why would I ever recommend that? And this is something that there are some people that are reactive to certain messages. Like you have, the David Goggins, Jocko Willink, which is essentially just kill yourself in Minecraft or whatever, for just going as unbelievably hard as possible. And aside from that, just not being something that's great for you, like it's actually just counteractive to the goals that people would otherwise have. Um, when people are exposed to that kind of advice, because ultimately, whatever algorithms tell people to watch is what people are watching these days. So whenever people are getting health advice, they're getting health advice from people that have very particular paradigms and ways of framing them. So in this sense, somebody is going to be giving you David Goggins, Jocko Willink, wake up at 3 a.m., run for 5 hours, take a 20-minute nap, go into work, and then run another, 10 miles after work, even though you've never run half a mile in your life. So in that sense, just a lot of paradigms that people are sort of given into are so, even if it was the ideal is to go the David Goggins or Jocko Willink route, giving people that as a here is what you should do is just not going to be fruitful, and it is going to take away the concept from people overall. And that's different from when you are on the grind set yourself and then talking about your own experiences is a lot different than prescriptions. Describing yourself when you are somebody who's, on the, like when it's like a time period where I was streaming where it's 55 hours a week. And I also had a full-time job that was a 40-minute commute. So 40 hours a week, 40-minute commute each day, and then 55 hours of streaming on top of that. I didn't have any burnout whatsoever. On my lunch breaks, I would go down to the gym and I would be eating as I was working. And so in this sense, like that is something that was perfectly fine for me to do in the place that I was at, but I wouldn't necessarily give that as a recommendation. Whereas I see a lot of people who are content creators, right? And they are essentially trying to make it their full-time thing, but then putting in part-time hours when like they're not doing anything else. And so they're really just like they need like a kick, but they also need to have something that's more grounded into the level that they're at.
I think one of the attributes you have that's really valuable in that regard is when I see you interact with people and giving advice is something we've talked about, which is the ability to hold multiple kind of thought processes or worldviews or outlooks in your head at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to step between one to the other, not necessarily just having one outlook or one thought process, but being able to understand many different thought processes enables you to not just relate to different people, but kind of see how they function and how they can be helped in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about fitness or diet, it's all the same thing, right? It's all health,
Mm-hmm.
really. Being able to approach it from like the perspective of, okay, you can work 120 hours a week. Not everyone can do that. Well, that's because your mindset or your worldview allows for this kind of thing to exist. Some people have a mental block in their head where they just can't get over the hours that is. It's daunting for them just to think about it, because in their worldview, that's not what you do. That's not living life the way
Mm-hmm.
that it should be lived. So in that respect, I think there's a lot of value, and we talk a lot about that kind of stepping between worldviews and stepping between different thought processes while still kind of maintaining your goals.
Yeah, and that's something that very just important as a concept in general is being able to sort of not only just able to operate within multiple different worldviews, multiple different frames, multiple different paradigms. That really is the first step, is being able to sort of think about something in a particular way and then going full send on it and essentially being able to completely operate within that paradigm of, even if you don't think that there's any value to something like communism, as an example, something that's like very heavily derided, easy to sort of be like against. It's still useful to understand that worldview and be able to think about things within that paradigm and not have that sort of reflexive urge of like, ooh, like that's bad. I hit the electric fence and it shocked me.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to add all of these different worldviews to where I can think about the perspective of somebody who is the, chicken, rice, and broccoli fitness guy, the carnivore guy, the Peter, the light guy,
Yeah.
all of these different paradigms of health, and I'm not looking at them of like, oh, this is dangerous to myself because they're saying something that is against like what I believe, because I think that it is very valuable if you can divorce the thoughts that you have and the opinions that you hold on things from your own self-worth. So when somebody is saying some kind of paradigm that goes against you, you don't have to feel like as it is an attack on you, because it's not an attack on you, and it's really just completely counterproductive to think about it that way.
I think that's one of the big things that allows us to discuss these. And this kind of brings back to the focus of like, why the podcast? Do we have something to say? And the reality is, yes, when we're talking, we're discussing, it should be noted that it's not an attack on someone just because we're talking about a particular worldview or this aspect or that aspect and the values it has. That doesn't automatically mean that other thought processes have no value or that this is the one you should be choosing. And I think that's a big part of people that are able to kind of move through life in a more stoic sense, and those that are a little more turbulent, and that they get hit by this concept, and this person over here says, oh, I have this worldview, and look how good it's going for me. And then people tend to react with, oh no, that I must be doing something wrong, or my worldview must have no value, or my other friend over here has a different worldview, and I just can't reconcile. I can't have both of these friends, or I can't listen to both of these people because they're saying different things. We're going to go over a lot of different concepts. Not all of them are going to be 100% synchronized in terms of all these things are true at the same time. I see a lot of people when they're trying to solve the great mystery of life, the universe, and everything, go about it kind of trying like physicists to find the unifying theory of, oh, there has to just be one thing that's right. And if you just find that one thing, then everything else will make sense. And the reality is you kind of have to pick pillars. Oh, this is like a core belief of mine, or that's a core belief. And those maybe don't move, but when you're looking at different mindsets, you have to be able to give them a try. And like you say, divorce them from your own self-worth. And so when someone says, oh, in communism, blah, 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 advantages or disadvantages, you don't just sit there and go, well, communism bad because I'm an American.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe there's value in at least a thought process, even if we're going to say there's no value in that system of governing as a whole, which is not really the concept here. Just kind of understanding that you don't have to feel attacked when your thing is not spoken about or your thing is spoken against, because there's pitfalls to lots of different thought processes.
Yeah, and that's also the benefit of not really feeling like your perspective is attacked if it's not the one that's brought up, if it's not the one that's being talked about. Because if you are constantly in that mindset, then you are not going to be able to actually receive some new or novel thought from somebody else, because you're going to want to constantly talk about your thing. Like I am very good at sort of taking somebody's perspective, no matter what it is, and then be able to, I'll never lie about my own perspective, but find sort of aspects of common ground or ways that I can sort of get a more useful understanding from like what is really motivating this person and what is the sort of the underlying ideas from this that I can take. And it's really, really valuable to be able to um, not think that, oh, everything needs to be about me and my thought processes. Like people can talk about, a particular health idea, and I don't need to bring up my own paradigm when other people are doing something. And that's also just a general understanding of being conscious about what is going around you socially. When somebody is talking about their thing, if all of a sudden I go in and talk about all of the ways that their paradigm is wrong, then I'm just, uh, for no real reason, trying to denigrate that person and then also try to uplift myself. Whereas that can be something that is useful in certain contexts, but that is a tool. That is not something that you want to do all of the time, especially not around your friends. People that you want to build up, you want to be building up around, you want to be building up everybody that is around you. There's no reason to, um, it is a scarcity mindset to think that there is a limited amount of clout to go around.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to make it to where everybody around you has as much clout as possible.
Yeah.
Because then it looks better on you that like, oh, hey, everybody around me is also like very serious as people. And they are people that you should take serious because they are real people and they have significant value. Whereas if you're just trying to take all of the glory for yourself, then it's like, oh, this guy is just trying to be the big fish in the small pond. This guy is just trying to be the smartest person in the room. Whereas you want to be in approximately a similar area of where you are at, capability, intellect, etc. You want to be in a place that is around your level, and that there are people that are smarter than you and people that are slightly below you. It's just always valuable to sort of be able to play those multiple roles.
Yeah, when we look at internet culture in general, and people will point at Reddit, but realistically, Reddit's just, a symptom of that kind of actually mindset, where you just always want to be right. That's not a super healthy mindset because two reasons. Firstly, it puts you in a position of just waiting for someone to say something wrong so that you can, as you mentioned, steal the clout for yourself, get the clout away from them or whatever. And then secondarily, you're never looking for something new that may correct your point of view. If you're always looking to correct other people or insert your worldview or your diatribe in there, you're not going to get the value out of other people talking. You can learn from most people. It's not that everyone has equal to offer in terms of teaching you, but just about everyone you run into, you can learn something from them if you're willing to kind of get into their headspace and sort of translate their wisdom, which is where the value of having multiple ability to step into multiple worldviews comes in. You can kind of get in their headspace so that what they're telling you is actually able to be translated to something that's usable for you. Whereas someone who may be in a completely different worldview might say things that just make no sense, but in their worldview, it's a particular kind of wisdom that is translatable in a certain way.
Yeah, and even at the bare minimum, you can at least understand that a person like this exists. This is the particular worldview of a certain person, and it is nothing but a benefit to understand what different people are like. And then you can sort of use that as sort of just a little piece of information that might be useful, might not be useful, but you always have it in your arsenal. You can always say, oh, in, Goldfield, Nevada, there's this type of particular person, or these are the general frames of where pretty much everybody in the sort of small, 200 person town is. And so, yeah, you just always want to essentially just be humble. It's just about not sort of feeling like everything is a competition, even though I am somebody who is naturally competitive in many senses. There are a lot of particular personality traits that are things that it's about understanding who you are and where you're at, and then being able to control them. So an example in the sort of the high risk area, right? We're doing some work and there's an opportunity to do something that is high risk. And that is naturally what my inclination would be towards. Um, but then it's just more understanding now is that like, what would actually be the benefit of taking this high risk? High risk should be at least medium reward.
At least, yeah.
At least, right? But if it is a high risk with absolutely no reward, there's literally nothing that you save but like 2 seconds of your time. Why would that be done?
Because you're inclined to it.
Yeah, I am inclined to it.
I think just kind of touching on. We're going to cover a lot of this more in depth, but touching on that high risk personality trait is like you're drawn to that. That's one of your pitfalls. And I do mean you specifically, but also you generally, people that are high risk are drawn to that. And that's one of those things you have to analyze is this actually worth it? If you're a good high risk taker, taking high risk is what you should do, but they should be high risk and like at least medium. Should not be like no reward, all the risk. It just doesn't make any sense. But then also just in terms of worldview and approaching different concepts, we have talked in the past, and this is something I think is really relevant before people start pursuing thoughts and narratives that are very much outside of the box, that are very much on the fringe. The word esoteric gets bandied around a lot, and it's a fair word to use, but esoteric can mean a lot of different things. When you're dealing with concepts that actually have never entered your sphere before, you've never heard them before, there is a concern just kind of in your overall sanity, cognitive dissonance, and overall well-being after understanding certain things. If they're far enough outside your wheelhouse, those worldviews are not easy to understand, and they're not easy to use well. A lot of concepts, even the ones that we hold today, very common in Western culture, can actually be dangerous to oneself. But we're taught from youth how to use the concepts that we grew up with. But as we explore other options in our adulthood, we don't always have that guidance in how to wield different worldviews.
Yeah, and that's a big thing is that the number one thing with any idea, with any type of expansion of your knowledge, expansion of knowledge in places to where you're finding out new, cool, esoteric things is very dangerous. The number one thing that you have to do is just maintain your sanity. Like you cannot let these ideas just completely one-shot you and then just make you go kind of crazy. So if an idea, I've seen this like quite a bit with many different people, is just like, oh, I can see that this idea is too much for me to handle right now. May be true, may not be true, but I personally can't handle it right now. And that's very responsible to do. Of sort of saying, I'm not saying that this idea is wrong, but if I had to understand the implications of what if this was true, then all of a sudden too many things break down and I need to rethink everything, and I just cannot do that. So I'm just gonna leave that aside for now. And that is ultimately going back to sort of like taking in new ideals and making sure that you actually maintain your sanity, is understanding what is and is not going to make you insane. And a big part of that is also just interacting with other people. When you are isolated, that is the easiest time to become insane, because interacting with other people is sort of an honesty check of you naturally making yourself, like if you ever go like a little bit too off the rails or you're just thinking about one topic all of the time, then interacting with other people can sort of remedy that. And so that's why it's much more valuable for us to be here doing this kind of like podcast thing, which is essentially just a conversation.
Yeah.
Having this is a whole lot better than me in a dark room. Not that I would ever be in a dark room.
It'd be a red room.
It'd be a red room or a natural daylight room.
Yeah. Or just outside.
Or just outside. Me just kind of going at these ideas alone. There's so much value in having somebody to sort of keep you honest.
Yeah, I think in that regard, we all probably have met people or dealt with people where when you run into them, they're kind of really on the far side of sanity. and it looks different. A lot of people, when they think insane, they kind of think of, maybe what they see in movies or media or whatever. But there's a lot of people who, for them, insanity is just this one pervasive thought in their head 24/7, and they can't actually function. They're just constantly hung up on this one little thing, trying to make it fit with everything else they know. And there's an element of cognitive dissonance, but there's also just an element of, like you said, lack of a socializing aspect. Because when you talk to other people regularly and you value those relationships, they're going to naturally talk about things that are not the one thing that you think about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to bring you out of that. It's going to help you.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you're slipping into something like that, it's always valuable to reconnect with friends, reconnect with family. One of the things that a lot of people run into in the age of conspiracy theories, if you will, which is kind of the time we live in, a lot of young guys who are maybe chronically online or maybe not chronically online, just a little bit online, and they hear about this stuff, and their next thing is at the Thanksgiving dinner table, I'm going to bring this up, and then they get in a screaming match with aunt whatever or grandma or somebody, and then they're like, how do I solve this? And it's like, well, you kind of need to be a little gentle and understand that if the concept is so pervasive in your mind, you can't set it aside and have dinner. Just kind of let it sit. Maybe that concept you're not ready for, or maybe you just need further guidance on how to use that concept to actually benefit you.
Yeah, there's two parts to that. One is that there's always the question of, okay, but how does this affect me?
Yeah.
Or like, oh, you think that this thing is true, but you don't have, a wife and 10 kids and a 10-bedroom house right now.
What a crushing blow.
Yeah. Your life isn't perfect, therefore this idea that you have that I don't like, the only reason your life isn't perfect is because you have this idea.
Yeah.
So in that sense, that is the big thing of just understanding where other people are at. And one is that you don't need to be giving every idea to every person that you see. Certain people, it will just be an actually dramatic negative to their life if you try to introduce that idea to them. Like a lot of older people that especially were raised at the beginnings of media, you could call them boomers. You could call them boomers. So they have been inundated with media in a very particular way. And the way that they've sort of operated it in society kind of points to them having a very particular set of beliefs. And there's no benefit that will come to just attempting to entirely shake their worldview. There are certain foundational pillars of their worldview. And if you're like, it's really important that like, you don't believe that actually happened, or it actually happened this way, or this thing or that thing, that is, even if you do get them to understand that and believe that, it's just going to be negative for them.
Yeah.
So in that sense, in the same way that with yourself, understanding what is something that would actually be realistic for me and something that would actually be beneficial for me. Because if I tried to go David Goggins style on my workouts, then I'm going to crash and burn and then completely give up on working out entirely. In the same way, that's how you treat your relationships as well. Try to treat them as well as you would treat yourself. And ideally treat both yourself and them good.
Yeah. Just because you're hard on yourself or like rude to yourself doesn't mean that, oh, well, I should just treat everyone like that.
Yeah.
You should take care of yourself. You should take care of your relationships. And I think that's a big part of wielding the weapon, so to speak, because they can hurt you. And like you mentioned, they can hurt others. Mm-hmm. You can just be totally damaging to other people. It's not essential that everyone believe the correct things. Mm-hmm. That's kind of one of those tenets that we, in the internet age, have foregone. Because if you think pre-internet era and even pre-widespread newspaper era, there's, in the 1920s, for instance, there was a lot less of America that was reached by news in general. Mm-hmm. It was okay to be a farmer and not necessarily know everything there is to know about a political sphere or about a philosophy. And those people lived, had families, and died. And it was not necessarily detrimental that they didn't know all these crazy esoteric concepts. Mm-hmm. So in that same way, there are people whose lives will actually be hurt by being introduced to various concepts. So keeping in mind that you yourself can get hurt, And then also, if you are strong enough to handle a certain concept, it doesn't mean that everyone around you is. You have to be careful with what you're sharing.
Yeah, and exactly. And that is why, if you have any of these ideas and you want to be talking about some like super out there schizophrenic idea, instead of trying to force your current relationships to be fitting into that mold of somebody who would be acceptable to talk about these things to, just find people that would be good for you and good for your life that you can talk about these things with. Because it's, I mean, you're just trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, or whatever the kids say these days.
The kids say that?
The kids say that these
Okay,
days.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Is this just a wait? Is this just an advertisement for the Yasukeh?
Indeed. Yeah, and that's a big benefit of just the Yasukeh, the Yasuke Discord, Yasuke Kings, which you can find in the description link down below. Check it out. But only if you're one of us. You will be summarily exiled if you just don't fit the vibe.
I think one of these episodes is going to be on kind of like hazing and cultural rituals and why that's important, why that's, I hesitate to say good, but why that's something that exists to begin with. But short of it, just don't expect that you don't get any hazing.
Yeah, yeah.
All cultural groups are this way.
Yeah, and it's also just in the concept of certain things are filters.
Yeah.
To where if you are, like, we went to an event, right? And, you know, if I'm talking to a woman, right? And, you know, a potential woman, and I'm like, hey, maybe, you know, there's a wife thing. Say something that is on the further edge, but it's something that I still believe is very important for a family structure. Just like as an example is like, I want to be like planning, you know, who my kids are going to marry well in advance. I think it's very important for people to be doing that, and essentially pre-planning these things to where, you know, the people are growing up with each other, and so many people have anxiety based on, you know, what job are they going to do, and then who are they going to marry.
Yeah.
Two biggest points of anxiety in the modern world. And I think that that's something that's important for parents to take care of. And in that sense, saying that as like a super transgressive idea is going to be a great filter for sort of who's receptive to it and who's not receptive to it. And this also just goes into the idea of there are certain relationships that you would never want to say an idea that's like super far transgressive or to take that risk, but there's other relationships that it's perfectly fine to take those risks on. If it's somebody that you know you're going to be seeing day in, day out, and that it's important that you maintain this relationship in a certain way, then you want to be more low risk in terms of what you say. But, you know, if it's a random social gathering and it's like a, hey, you know, there's a chance if things go really well that you continue to talk to each other afterwards. But otherwise, you're never going to see this person again. That is the time to where it's really useful to sort of go out and take those high risk moves, because then you instantly know, like, hey, all right, there is a really valuable lead here and I can actually do something.
Yeah, it'd be really easy to, in those type of scenarios where you're trying to probe to kind of see if this is your people or not your kind of people, especially, you know, wife hunting, to use a kind of a vulgar term. When you're doing that, you really want to know how, you know, want to get the furthest, the fastest, because you may never necessarily want to see this person again. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just like they're not your people, or they are. And so in that way, like you're saying, taking the furthest possible kind of transgressatory statement is helpful. But you wouldn't want to just do that to someone who you absolutely are going to have to be with. You think of like coworkers on the first day of working at a company. You wouldn't necessarily just want to immediately hit some coworker with like some really offensive statement or something that's going to really challenge their worldview, because that's all they're going to think about you. And if they don't really agree, or if they're not open to it, they're just going to be shut off from you basically for that entire relationship. And that just makes life harder for you. Again, wielding those weapons in a correct format where you're gaining something from it, not hurting people. Because it also is beneficial for other people who are not in the same frame as you to know as quickly as possible that they're not your kind of people either. It's kind of disingenuous to try and lure someone in like, oh, I just love talking about our favorite colors, and then like 3 months into a relationship, randomly hit them with some crazy out there thought like, oh yeah, I kind of want parents to be involved in my kid's marriage. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah. Or like, oh, I want to have kids.
That is a big one. I think in terms of ideas to be wielded, I want to have kids is kind of the most like that's the most polearm of the concepts, because that is your primary weapon in determining whether you want to be around these people.
Yep.
Because if people say things like, I don't want to have kids, at least for me, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to be around you because that's so adverse to my whole sphere. I can understand their mindset, but it's not beneficial to me at all. And I understand it well enough that I don't need to have any interaction in that regard.
Yeah. There's just no real value here. And as soon as you understand that, then it's like, okay, I understand the grounds that we're at, and then now we can do this. But ultimately, biggest thing that we're kind of talking about, kind of like summarizing a lot of it, is really just if you are the kind of person like us, and these ideas and things that we're going to be talking about are interesting to you, the most important thing is to just be responsible with the tools that you are given. I do not want to give you a shotgun and then you're a spiritual toddler who's going to, do stuff with it that you shouldn't be doing. You need to be understanding of the power that certain tools have, and understanding that these weapons can just absolutely one-shot somebody, including yourself and people around you, if you don't utilize them properly. So whenever you're looking into new ideas and understanding new concepts, just be responsible.
Totally agree.
All right, and that is the first episode. It was good stuff.
It's good stuff.